Hi, my name is Philip Nelson, and today we're going to be talking about automated contact tracing. So this is a very important issue right now, and I think you'll see why in a few minutes. But automated contact tracing is going to change the way we can actually identify who has an infection, and it's very important because we're dealing with coronavirus, and we'll probably be dealing with more pandemics like this as our population increases. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, first we'll talk about what contact tracing is, and then we'll talk about why it's important. So there are lots of reasons that it's important, but we'll get into those reasons. And then we'll give you an example of how contact tracing works, both manual and automated contact tracing. There's two different types of contact tracing, and we'll be discussing that. And then we'll go further in depth on what has been done as far as automated contact tracing because we're more interested in that as computer scientists. There's currently one implementation, and we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about some ethical issues related to contact tracing, especially automated contact tracing. And then we'll wrap it all up. So, what exactly is contact tracing? Well, when diseases spread, we like to know who's infected with that disease. And to prevent that disease, it's important to know which one of our contact or which people we've come into contact with the disease. Or if we are infected with the disease, we'd like to be able to let others know that we have that disease. So doctors and health professionals have developed this idea of contact tracing, and it's going through the people that we know and seeing how we can help prevent that disease from spreading. It's used to identify and alert people who have encountered an infected person. Now, some people have noticed that we could possibly automate this because most people have a cell phone, but there are some potential ethical issues with automating that, but we'll look into that in a later slide. First, we need to talk about why contact tracing is important. It allows us to proactively inform people that they've been infected or they've been exposed to an infection, so they need to go get tested. It also allows people to see what people that they may come into contact with may be infected. It can also hamper the transmission of infection. The World Health Organization and the CDC have recommended contact tracing for a long time, just not automated contact tracing. It's better than waiting to find out if you're infected. A lot of infectious diseases have an incubation period longer than 2 weeks, so it's hard to know if you're actually infected, and you could be spreading the disease without knowing it. It also has the potential to lower and flatten the curve. So, lowering the curve is something we've heard over and over these past few weeks, and if people know that they've been exposed to infection, they're more likely to stay at home and social distance like they should be doing. So how does contact tracing work? Well, the World Health Organization outlined this strategy in 2017 during the Ebola epidemic, but it applies to all future pandemics such as the one we're going through now. So the first step is contact identification. Once a person tests positive, a health professional can identify infected contacts that they've talked to or been around in the past few days. So the way this is done is the health professional asks them, okay, who have you talked to in the past few days that you might have been around longer than a certain amount of time? And then the person gives them that information. Now, you might be wondering, okay, well, what if I forget about I've been around this person? That's where automated contact tracing will come in later. So then a health professional lists out the people that the patient mentioned, and then they contact that person, confidentially of course, and tell them they may have been exposed to an infectious disease. Then they give them information about prevention and testing. That's critical because then that person, if they go get tested, they can inform their contacts. So this allows people an opportunity to go get tested and it allows them to understand about prevention. So if they have been exposed, they can stay home. Contact follow-up is the third step. So the health professional will check in regularly to make sure that that contact isn't exhibiting symptoms. And if they are, they can give them information about how to go get tested. So how do we automate it? Well, there are several ways to automate this, but the most common way that is currently being thought of is using Bluetooth. Bluetooth, the original spec, allows phones or other devices to communicate with each other, and even passively, without actually pairing a device, devices can see each other. They register that they've seen each other, but then they automatically delete that as soon as possible. So in order to change the way the Bluetooth spec work, some apps are taking those automatic connections and logging them. And so now we have a record of all the contacts that we've come into contact with. So if a person tests positive, then a notification is sent out to any phone that has come into contact with that phone, with that person's phone. Then the informed person can take the next steps, including testing and prevention info can be provided. So that's a good thing. And this is easier than asking a patient, okay, who have you seen in the past few days that might possibly be infected? It's a lot more accurate. Yes, there will be some false positives, but it's more important to keep people safe than it is to worry about those false positives. So, there haven't been many actual examples of automated tracing available, but they're starting to be. It might not be ready to use during the current COVID-19 pandemic, but it's important that we go ahead and try, because trials mean more accuracy in the future in other pandemics. So in Singapore, they built an app called Trace Together. They launched it on March 20th this year, and it uses Bluetooth instead of GPS. Now, they were originally thinking about using GPS, but because GPS has a higher margin of error, they decided to use Bluetooth because Bluetooth allows us to easily trace our contacts. GPS is a lot more inaccurate than Bluetooth when tracing contacts. They've also open sourced the protocol, which is BlueTrace, and Google and Apple are currently using that protocol to build their own apps. The data is encrypted. They take each Bluetooth connection and then they encrypt that data, and only a health professional can unlock that data. I have a video I'm going to show you in just a few seconds about that. And then the creators want people to know that this is far from perfect and can't replace manual contact tracing. I actually read an article by one of the creators of the app, and he said that manual contact tracing is far more superior than the automated contact tracing is right now. So now I'm going to show you the video.
Trace Together uses Bluetooth signals to determine when your phone is near another phone that also has the app installed. Both phones exchange anonymized IDs, which are then stored in encrypted form only on your phone. If a user gets infected with COVID-19, he or she will be asked to give contact tracers access to the Trace Together data, a list of anonymized IDs that your phone has been close to. And that's really it. No geolocation or other personal data is collected.
Alright, now we're back and we're going to talk about some of the ethical issues involved with contact tracing. So, not everyone would benefit from automated contact tracing. Specifically, people without phones are not going to benefit from contact tracing. And a lot of people without phones probably aren't going to be able to go to the doctor and actually be able to trace through their contacts. So this is one area of the population that we're missing. And that's critical. There's also people who don't know how to download an app. So specifically for your elderly population who may not be familiar with phones and how to download an app, they're not going to be able to download an app that can tell them who they've come into contact with, which is important because elderly people are at higher risk for many infectious diseases. So we have to think about ways to actually involve them with the contact tracing process. Private companies may want to use the collected data, such as Google and Apple, because in the past, Google hasn't shown very much ability to understand privacy concerns. But they seem right now to be following Singapore's model of making sure the data is encrypted. There's also some health privacy law concerns. Improper encryption or data leakage is an issue that we have to think about whenever we deal with health records or health information. And there have been some data leaks concerning coronavirus apps or apps built to stop the spread of coronavirus. This article right here is about a major data leak found in a potential coronavirus app in, I think, the Netherlands. And just being aware of those issues, we have to, when building these apps, is something that we have to know. And so, in conclusion, automated contact tracing could help us speed up the process of identifying possible infections. Manual tracing is a lot better right now, but in the future, it could help us be able to quickly identify contacts. And that's important, especially with a very fast spreading pandemic. It's very important to be able to identify who's got it and be able to get information to them about testing and prevention. It uses Bluetooth and encryption technology. Some people are worried that, as far as data leakage, that it might reveal location. But right now, the companies that are developing this technology are not using GPS technology. It's also based on an open source implementation of the Singapore government, or by the Singapore government, and that's very good because open implementations are a lot more susceptible to audits, and those audits make sure that the technology behind our app is sound. There's also some underlying ethical issues, but if approached responsibly, those underlying ethical issues are not really an issue. But we do have to be aware of those. So I would just want to thank you for listening to my presentation. And if you want to find out more, there's lots of information online about this. Thank you.